Thanks for taking time out this morning, everybody, and joining us for this. This is a particularly interesting report. I've been doing research into the BIM space since 2007, and hopefully some of you have seen our Smart Market reports in the past. I think they represent, I guess, the earliest stages of adoption and implementation, but I think we're all at the point now where we've done enough projects as an industry that we should be able to begin to measure the impact in some common fashions. And I'll take you through some of the highlights of this particular report. You had the opportunity to download it at the registration for this webinar, and there's also going to be the opportunity for you to get a PDF version of these slides that I'm going to share with you today, which are kind of my analysis of what we found in this. But the whole point of this thing is to begin to take the idea that we all know that BIM is good and turn it into something more like a business case and aim it really specifically at owners. As we all know, the more that owners engage and the more that owners begin to understand the benefits, then it's going to be easier for everybody to be using modeling and model-based processes on projects. So we really think that the cornerstone to this business case is going to be the ability to quantitatively measure the positive impact. So all of us have been to conferences, we've seen webinars where individual teams will present a project that they did, and they measured these things, somebody else measured other things, a third outfit measured another set of things, and they did it in different ways at different times. And it ends up being a lot of anecdotal evidence on a relatively small number of projects. And so we wanted to take this opportunity to try and pull a lot of people together and have them talk to us about the projects that they've done in a consistent fashion so we can begin to get, hopefully, a common set of metrics that everybody can begin to use. Then we start to really, truly build a story. We start to frame a business case that all the rest of these owners who are on the fence, who've heard about it, but they're not sure about it, really get them involved. And this was sponsored really by an owner. If any of you guys know Renee Tejan at the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs, she's an architect there. She's a BIM champion in-house. And she came to us and said, can we begin to try and change the conversation here? And can we begin to do something that's actually more of a business case? And I said, the timing is perfect for all the reasons that I just shared with you guys. We also had a lot of help from the AIA. Microsoft was a big help to us. VDCO Tech was a big help, as well as the Building Smart Alliance. And Skanska was also extremely helpful to us in framing some of the questions that and the things that we're focused on as we go through. So let me take you through how we did this. With the help of a lot of folks on the outside, looking at all the various things that could be measured and we believed have the kind of downstream impact of upstream modeling that we're looking for, we came down on a list of 23 separate things which happen on projects, and they happen in design, they happen in construction, they can be measured after the fact, but they're all things which tie to the value of these model-based processes. And where possible, as opposed to just doing a 1 through 5 rating, we also began this process of asking people to assign an actual percentage of improvement. We only picked 6 out of those 23 to do that with, but we think that this is an important start. And so I'll share with you the learnings we have on those 23, and then separately those 6 things which we ask people to actually assign a percentage of improvement to, because we want to begin this conversation in the industry. We also asked people going forward, which of these aspects do you think are going to have the greatest impact as BIM matures? And we also did a little bit of a dive into what's happening with that final transfer of model-based data and the graphics of models to owners for FM. So how we did this, we had an online survey. It ran from early March until the middle of April, and there were 391 total respondents. We also did in-depth interviews with 8 senior-level owners, several of them for hospitals, because we wanted to focus this on complex buildings. I mean, tilt-up warehouses are not where you tend to run into the kinds of issues that model-based processes are really good at dealing with. It's really the more complex buildings. So we really tried to focus on everybody in the survey dealing with complex buildings. And so you can see here the kinds of players that we talked to get some specific depth on it, and those comments are in the report as well. But here's how the 391 break out. We had 40 of these complex building owners, 183 architects, 68 engineers, and 100 general contractors. And we screened them out if they didn't have a high level of familiarity with BIM use. On a 1 to 5 level, they had to be either a 4 or a 5. And they had to have a high level of experience with programmatically complex or systems-intensive projects. And we used examples like labs, hospitals, data centers. We also have airports and complex transportation and things like that. And you can see here how the architects, the engineers, and the contractors break out in terms of whether they're pure A, AE, or multidisciplinary that had architecture as a lead, and the various types of engineers we had, and the various types of contracting firms. And this is all in the report. And so here's what I'll go through today in terms of what we dealt with. We looked at the relative impact of BIM on these 23 different activities and 10 different categories. And what we did is we asked people to rate the impact that they're getting on a 1 to 5 scale. And then those who said that they're getting that at a relatively high level, then we asked them to actually quantify it on 6 of those in terms of what % improvement did you actually get. We hope to be doing this on a regular basis going forward and add to that number that we're actually getting people to do that with, but we wanted to do this as a start just to begin this process. We also looked into what are the obstacles to success, what's happening with forecasting in terms of what do you think the most important things going forward are going to be, and then how it's been being used for FM. So let's take a look at these 23. So they break down into 10 categories: owner engagement and understanding, design, documentation and constructability, estimating and bidding, construction phasing and logistics, the contractor's ability to better understand design intent, the impact on cost control and cost reduction, the impact on schedule and actually schedule duration, and then its impact on the nasty stuff that tends to happen on projects: unplanned changes, rework, out-of-sequence work, and then labor, safety, and material waste. So the idea here is to look at this as a system and not just, oh, it's great that the architects are modeling, but nobody else is. Well, it's not that great anymore. We really got to get the whole ecosystem working with these model-based processes. So what we're trying to establish is the value of early-stage modeling and all of its downstream benefits. So I'll take you through each of these 10 categories here, and I'll show you in each category we have at least 2 subtopics. And as you'll see, every one of these charts is laid out the same way. You got very high people. How many people said this has a very high impact? In the center, how many say it had a high impact? And in the orange, how many people said it had a medium impact? And then the total of those 3, saying that it has more than just a no impact or low impact. So you can see that 3/4 of owners give this high and very high rating to the fact that, yes, they actually believe they understand design better. My background, I worked for a very large AE firm. I was a principal there. I was in that space for 20 years. I worked for some pretty sophisticated clients, and I'm sure, as all you guys realize, not all of them really get it when they're looking at drawings and a few renderings, some elevations. They nod their head. They don't want to look dumb. But are they really getting it? And one of the really powerful things is that you can truly engage your owner much more effectively when you can bring them in with that visualization. And then you see it in this next metric here in terms of could they really actively participate in the design process more effectively. And you got very high ratings from owners there. And then you see the supporting numbers from architects and engineers agreeing. So, you know, this is really all about owners telling us that they're more deeply engaged in this. Then we get into is BIM impacting the design itself. And then you're seeing here around 3/4 of owners saying that they actually say, yes, BIM increases the ability to manage that project scope as you move through that design phase and to maintain that scope as you move it through a construction. So you don't have to go through value engineering, you don't have to do scope cuts, right? We're actually able to manage that project scope better. These are pretty encouraging readings. Not quite as high as their engagement readings, but still really pretty encouraging. And again, these are things which what we're doing now is just baselining where we are, and we hope to do this periodically, you know, every 2 or 3 years going forward, and hopefully we're going to see these numbers grow. And did it actually give me a better building? Did it actually improve the quality and function of the final design? And I think these are really encouraging numbers. You get 30% owners giving a very high and another 33 saying high. This is really powerful stuff. And then you get into the work product and the quality of that work product, all right? So did we generate better construction documents? And especially from the contractor's viewpoint, did we improve the constructability of that final design? Both of these scored extremely well. And again, I find this very encouraging. The vast majority of owners think BIM generates better construction documents and improves the constructability. And the contractors are almost unanimous in saying it improves the constructability. So this is this upstream modeling and the downstream benefits that I'm, again, trying to get the industry to understand that this is a system now, and these model-based processes are having a beneficial effect all the way through. Then we get into, all right, now you've got the documents. What's the impact on estimating and on bidding? Are you actually seeing improved process and accuracy of doing those estimates, and are you seeing improved accuracy and completeness of bids? Again, the reason that we were advised to land on this set of things you're seeing is because everybody we talk to believes that these are the things which are actually measurable and really impactful in terms of the whole process. This is where you want to see BIM making a difference. And all the respondents report a pretty moderate impact of BIM on estimating and accuracy. So these aren't quite as strong as you see in the previous categories, right? But again, this is the baseline, and we're hoping to see that this improves over time. Then you get into, all right, now it's in the contractor's world. Now that you're working in this model-based environment, is this having a positive impact on how you're able to do the construction phasing and the logistics? And we're getting pretty good numbers here. Most owners and contractors report a greatly improved ability to plan the phasing and do the logistics. And for the owners actually to, again, be much more engaged in that and actually understand it more effectively. Because I think all of us understand that the more engaged an owner is, the better the project's going to be for everybody, and the closer alignment there's going to be to the final product and that owner's expectations all the way through their organization. Then in terms of that handoff between the design team to the contractor side, are we doing a better job of actually conveying design intent? And is the contractor able to actually feel that they're getting a better understanding of design intent? This is so critical in terms of that powerful handoff between design and construction and the sharing of this knowledge. And we're seeing pretty good numbers here. Architect, engineer, and contractor firms all reporting a pretty strong impact of BIM on increasing the contractor's understanding of that proposed design. One of the ways that we think that is reflected is, are you seeing fewer RFIs? Because that's where there is a lack of understanding, you're going to get an RFI. And so we think that that's a pretty tangible kind of a metric that we can look at. Now here you're going to see the differential between contractors' view of the world and architects' view of the world, where you're getting twice as many contractors saying, yeah, they're definitely reduced, whereas architects aren't saying that quite as strongly. So there's some politics in there, I believe, in that answer. But again, we want to be tracking this over time going forward, and I think that's going to be a very telling metric going forward because it's measurable. Right, we actually can measure that, and I think if we see over time reduced number of RFIs, it's going to mean that all the way from the beginning in developing these model-based processes, there's clearer understanding on everybody's part and clearer understanding with the aspect of, can I build what I'm seeing here? Then you get into BIM's impact on cost control and on, can we actually reduce the final construction cost of this project because we're working in a modeled environment? All right, these are things which are definitely going to resonate with owners and with contractors. So what you see here is 2/3 of owners and over 3/4 of contractors are reporting that, yes, indeed, there is at least a medium amount of improvement over that control of the process of controlling those construction costs. You know, the very high numbers aren't really strong right now. They're still, 13 and 11. But that high number is pretty good. So you look at those top two together, and that's a pretty good chunk. Then are we getting into where we can actually say that because we're working in this model-based environment, we are reducing the final construction cost of the projects? Owners are actually saying more so than contractors at that high level. But when you put the very high and high together, it's a essentially the same, and overall you're still getting over half the owners and over 2/3 of the contractors reporting that, yes, indeed, we are actually reducing the final construction cost. And this is one of the things which we measure quantitatively, and I'll show you that in the next section, as well as the RFI reduction. We measure that quantitatively. Is this shortening my schedule? Is this allowing me to meet my milestones? And is it also actually allowing me to accelerate my completion? This is something which we also took the folks who said that they're getting this, the 65 and the 68%, and we asked them to quantify this here in the next section. But these are pretty good numbers. So both cost and schedule are showing I was actually very pleased when I saw these numbers being as strong as they are. Then the really tough stuff that tends to happen on projects, the unplanned changes, the rework, the out-of-sequence work, the stuff that just makes you pull your hair out on projects that often can be traced to uncoordinated documents, missing information, et cetera, that happened earlier in the project and don't get discovered until during construction, and then they create these problems. So this we thought was, and everybody we talked to thought, this is really important stuff to try and track if we can. And I think it's pretty good results here. Over 3/4 of the owners and contractors are reporting better predictability. They're reporting reduced rework and less out-of-sequence work because they're working in this model environment. Now, these are three things in particular I'm really hoping that we see as we move forward doing more of this. We really see some growth in these, because this is probably the most important way you can measure the downstream benefits of upstream modeling, and the participative and collaborative processes and the integrated processes that you can engage in because you're working in that model-based processes. How do they really reduce the problems on projects? In the last section, there's actually 2 slides here for it. It's the impact on labor and then the impact on safety and material waste. So these 2 are things which we also, as you'll see in the next section, ask those who are saying that they're getting it at this relatively high level. We're saying, all right, how much did you actually get? And so you're seeing here pretty good results, not a lot in that very high range, but a respectable number in that very high plus the high range, certainly, of actually improving the labor productivity because you're working in this model-based environment. And this shift towards off-site and near-site fabrication, right? This is something that we're all familiar with. It's especially happening with mechanical trades and structural trades. It's beginning to happen more with electrical. I'm beginning to see it happen with interior partitions being done in chunks in shops and brought in with prefabricated with certain mechanicals in them. But beginning to see more and more of this off-site kind of productization of the various parts of projects. And how you can see that is, are you getting less site labor? And this is this trend towards assembly rather than construction on sites. And so this is going to be very interesting to track over time. When you put all 3 categories together, you're seeing pretty good numbers. You're still not seeing a lot at the very high, but you're seeing pretty respectable here in the high and a lot in the medium. But, overall, you got over half the owners, almost 3/4 of the contractors reporting that they're getting good results here. So the ones that are actually really still emerging are the safety and material waste. Not quite as strong as some of the other ones that we've seen. Safety, I think, is going to increase. You're beginning to see more people actually able to work in a safety environment, doing modeling around safety, developing safety models, putting their safety rules into a model and using rule checkers against that. It hasn't turned up yet in terms of being able to be measured against a reduction in reportable safety incidents to the degree that we hope that we actually see it start to do that over time. So in summary, if you want to take the ones that all scored above 70 for anybody and put them in one place, you can see here contractors saying that I really see an improved constructability of final design. That is really important. You really get owners actually really understanding much more effectively what the proposed design solutions are. you actually get improved quality and function of final design. At least the engineers are saying that. And I think they're seeing that a lot around the ability to do analysis and simulation work around mechanical systems and structural systems. You know, they're actually able to do a better job because they're working in modeling. And then generating better construction documents coming from the owners and the improved ability to do construction phasing and logistics. So pulling out just the responses from the owners, because at the end of the day, a lot of why we did this was to try and begin to establish in the owner's mind, and especially the owners who are doing some BIM, you want them to do more, or they're not doing any, and you want them to get into it. What is it that we can begin to tell owners that they could expect they'll probably get at a pretty high level, because here, all their peers are saying that these are the kinds of things that they're getting at a pretty high level. So we've got it broken out here in two groups. This is really how the processes of getting there have been improved, their ability to understand, the ability to do that phasing and logistics, their understanding of that phasing and logistics, increased predictability and fewer unplanned changes has got to resonate with every owner out there. Their ability to more actively participate, manage the scope, control the costs, meet those scheduled dates, and better estimating and control the construction costs there. So especially the things that are above 50%, you know, part of the reason that we did this was that all of us can now begin to go to owners and say, look, here's some data from a bunch of projects, not just onesie-twosie projects, but a whole lot of projects of people who are doing complex work and they're doing it in modeled. Here's what you can begin to reliably expect that you'll be able to get. And then the second group here are things which are outcomes. The fact that those processes are improved mean that you're going to get better CDs. You're going to have a more constructible design. You're actually going to get a better project. You're going to have less rework. And then the ones here, the rest of the ones you can see. But I think this begins to start to frame a business case that's beyond one firm saying, here's what I've been able to do, but look, here's what the whole industry is saying. And we want to keep growing this over time. We hope all you guys will participate in the next round of surveys that we do on this. So taking not just the owners, but taking everybody, all the responses to all those 23 benefits, we took them all and reformatted them here into a 1 to 10 index. So you can see here relative to one another where we're tending to get a lot of lift right now and where things are still emerging. You know, down there on the lower right, the safety incidents of material waste are only the 2.1 and the 3.2, not rating as strongly as, say, things in the upper left, you know, that owner's ability to understand the design, or the improved quality and function of the final design. That's pretty powerful. You know, or the 9.0 that we got around the improved constructability of the final design. You know, these are very meaningful things. And if you go down there, the 8.8 around the improved ability to plan, phasing and logistics, and on the upper right there, the 8.0 with increased contractors' understanding of that proposed design solution. So this downstream benefit of upstream modeling, you know, we're really trying to get owners to understand that by effectively engaging these model-based processes on their projects, they're really improving the entire flow through to completion. So the 6 things that we chose to ask people to assign actual percentages to on this were reduction of the final construction cost, and were you actually able to shorten the project? Did you see a reduced number of RFIs? Did you see reduced reportable safety incidents? Did you see increased labor productivity? And did you see less site labor due to increased off-site fabrication? All of these are really relatively easy to track. And so for this first pass that we're doing here, we just picked these 6 things to get actual percentages on. And as opposed to asking people to tell us what percentage, we simply gave them ranges. We just want to get this conversation started, if you will. So let me take you through what these slides look like, these charts look like. These charts are made up of 2 pieces. And so this will show for any one of these 6 things, how many people in that tan area said it has a low or no impact. That brown area is, yes, I do believe it has at least a medium, high, or very high impact, but I don't know that I could actually quantify it. and then that subset in the blue, which is, yes, I do believe it has that impact, and I am able to actually assign one of these ranges to it. All right, so we took that subset of people who believe it has a positive impact and felt comfortable putting a range to it, and we gave them ranges. And so the bar chart that you'll see, in 4 of these, we did what we would call moderate. We said, is it somewhere less than 5%, at least positive, but less than 5%? Is it a mid-range in the 5 to 10% improvement, or is it better than 10%? And in 2 of them, the labor ones, we actually did much bigger ranges. We said, is it under 25% improvement, or is it 25 to 50% improvement, or is it better than 50% improvement? Because that's where we were advised, at least by the contractors who were helping us put this together, who were really seeing some pretty great stuff. So these ranges, you'll blow these ranges out. You know, you should set bigger ranges. And so you'll see the 4 of them are set with these ranges, and 2 of them are set with bigger ranges. So let me take you through what the responses were. In this case, the reduction of the final construction cost of your project because you engaged with BIM on this thing. And we have the owners and we have the contractors. And the key findings here, almost half the owners, almost 3/4 of the contractors are reporting this cost reduction. And you're seeing how it's breaking out. Most people are in that mid-range still, but that's actually really pretty good. 5 to 10% reduction of final cost is a pretty compelling thing. You're going to get an owner's attention with that. Then we got into, can you accelerate your schedule? Everybody out there knows schedules aren't getting any shorter, and owners are interested in accelerating a schedule any way they possibly can. And so again, here you see really pretty good numbers, and they're in that mid-range. The bulk of them are in that mid-range. They're not just down in that low range. All right, so 5 to 10% in both cases in the perspective of owners and contractors. And actually a pretty reasonable number, 21 and 27% saying they're actually better than 10% schedule acceleration because they're using these model-based processes. Then we got into that metric I talked about before, which I think is an indication of better documentation, which is fewer RFIs. And here you're getting really, really strong. This one, the next time around, we might move into that higher range actually because the majority were more than 10%. So we might move that into that sort of 25 and 50 range next time around and start measuring that at the higher level. Then the safety, which we didn't expect to be high, but we want to put it in the conversation. It's so important that we wanted to begin to at least include it even in this first round of measurements. And as you can see, most of the results that we're getting are still in that less than 5%, but you're getting some that are more than 10%, right? This is very encouraging and something that, to us at Dodge is particularly important and significant. And I'm sure those of you who are on the construction side would agree with me. So pulling all these together, these 4 that we did in this 5 and 10% ranges together, you can see the responses here. The RFIs, the third one down there, is the one that scored the highest overall. But schedule reduction is next, and cost right after that. And safety is still the one that would be considered emerging. So now you've got this higher range, and we start here with, did you get improved labor productivity? And we're still getting the majority of responses are less than 25%, but we really got a pretty respectable amount. They're in that 25 to 50. We don't have anybody saying more than 50%, but man, that's staggering. That's super powerful. But we were advised by the contractors that we worked with on helping put this together, we're going to get there. And so this is really pretty powerful stuff. And then we got into that offsite aspect. Are you seeing reduction in your on-site labor because you're doing more stuff off-site? Owners didn't respond as well because I think, frankly, they just may not know as much about it. They just may not be as aware of it. But from the contractors, you're actually seeing, we had a few contractors, and remember we had 100 GCs, and so at least 3 of them are saying they're getting more than a 50% reduction of their on-site labor because they're able to do off-site fabrication because they're working modeling. This is going to be a really, really interesting metric to track as we move forward because that's an absolutely unstoppable process of industrialization of the entire design to construction and that design to manufacture kind of a context. So overall, when you summarize the percentage of those folks that put something in at least the middle or the high range, here's how many did that for each of those. And the top 4 here are those lower scaled metrics, and the bottom 2 are those higher scaled metrics. And so this is the kind of overall summary that can be useful in talking with owners to say, look, this is real. We have a lot of owners contributing to this conversation here, a lot of contractors contributing to this, a lot of architects contributing. These are things which you can realistically now expect if you would please begin to consider engaging, or if you aren't doing it with all of your projects, begin to spread it across all of your portfolio projects. You can expect to start to see these kinds of results because this is what all your peers are definitely getting. So the obstacles to success, what's holding us back here? So we looked at this in a few different ways. These are the ones that are about the project team. What is it about the project team that tends to be in your way? So you see how they score out here, and we also have them broken out between the owner's perspective, the engineer's perspective, and the contractor's perspective. And this is the percentage that said that this is a high or very high obstacle, right? A 4 or a 5 on a scale of 5. So you're seeing that the lack of the team member involvement beyond specifically the phase that they're typically hired for. And what this is really getting at is, boy, is it better when you can get your trades involved earlier. Everything's better when you can get your trades involved earlier, right? And so as opposed to the classic design bid build scenario where the trade isn't coming in until the end, all the contracting strategies are about avoiding risk and transferring it to the trades. They have very little say or input on aspects of constructability. They're just supposed to do what they're handed. You're just not getting the same benefit as when you can actually get people engaged earlier in the process. That's really what's behind that. And then the second most negatively impactful thing actually is the fact that some people just aren't supportive. You just don't have people with their head in the game. And the degree to which, again, we can use any of these kind of quantified improvements to demonstrate to folks, look, it really is better to work this way. Please join us in this. That's going to get better and better over time. Then you have some of the other ones around the perception of additional cost, or the lack of actual documentation of how we would use this together, or that we just don't have enough quantified objectives for how we're going to use these together. A lot of that gets to BIM planning. Then we get into things which are quite honestly owner-related. What is it about the owner? And here you'll see number 1 being that the owner just doesn't get it. And so this is probably the number 1 reason that we did this, is that we really want to arm everybody, all the AEC players in the industry, to go to their owners and help use this third-party data to explain that, look, there's really very compelling benefits here. Try this out because you can actually, I don't know if I can guarantee you, but you can look at enough of this evidence that's not just anecdotal, but these benefits are real and other people are getting them. And then secondly is that they're not sufficiently involved in how it's happening. And so the degree to which you can encourage an owner to participate in generating a BIM plan is going to get them engaged, right? The visualization of the design is going to get them engaged. The visualization of the construction phasing and planning is going to get them engaged, and the whole project is going to work a whole lot better. Then the other ones you see is they're not providing the standards and guidelines, right? And so to me, for all of you guys, it's a great consulting opportunity to go and sit with owners and help them develop those things. You do have a situation where owners are actively discouraging it, right? But fortunately, that's scoring relatively low. And then the owner gets the value, but doesn't really, want to help. And fortunately, those 2 of these 5 scored the lowest. And then lastly, it's what obstacles are there that are related to that technology itself. And the number 1 is, look, I just don't have enough people who know how to technically do this stuff. And that's where I think all of you guys are probably well ahead of the rest of the industry. But this does need to be a core competency of firms going forward. And so if you're a design firm and you work with contractors who aren't as skilled as they could be, encourage them to do that. If you're a contractor and you're working with trades who aren't as skilled as they could be, please encourage them to do that. It's going to make it better for everybody. And then secondly, the second one is really about this incompatibility. It's not as toxic. It's more toxic with owners here than it is with the AECs, but it's still there. I know as an industry we're making strides on that and better interoperability, but you know, it still is named as the #2 most significant obstacle related to technology itself. The other ones are that data is difficult to move between tools, which then also relates to incompatible technologies. Insufficient training for the inexperienced people, which is a theme all the way through here. And then lastly is that project meetings don't take advantage of the models. And fortunately, that's scored lowest because in other research that we've done, if you will actually really build your project meetings around those, the use of models for that, wow, does that have a big impact. So when we ask people in an open-ended question, we just said, look, design team, the A's and the E's, we ask the contractors, we ask the owners, what's the #1 thing really that you think is in the way? The #1 thing that floats at the top in these open-ended answers from design teams is that aspect of getting people to the point that they can actually use these tools well. Contractors are really looking to owners to buy in, and owners are saying, you know, change management is difficult for us. We're set up to do things in a certain way. Bringing this new process in is disruptive for us, right? And so in a sense, this is a really good opportunity for both A's and E's and C's to help their owners understand how to drive this change. Data like we've tried to put together here is a great way to open that door and introduce that conversation and give them a weapon internally, right, or a tool internally that they can now begin to socialize this idea that this is good, but to help them understand how to change that, to introduce the idea that, hey, there is this BIM execution plan out there. Let's sit down and go through this together. There are some standards I can help you put in place that we've used successfully in other projects. You know, help them adapt to that change. This is really a cry for help. So when we ask people, where do you think the future, the biggest impact is going to be? There's a whole section of this in the report, but this is kind of a summary matrix of it. And this is really the owner's perspective, because again, at the end of the day, the owners are the ones who drive this. In the report, you'll see, or if you've already seen, this has it for everybody's perspective, but I've just pulled out the owner's one here, of you know, where it is that they're expecting to see the biggest lift. And they really love that schedule thing. If you can tell me, if you can convince me that I'm really going to be able to drive schedule compression, you have got my attention, right? And also that if you can convince me that we're going to reduce our site labor due to the fact that you're able to do more off-site fabrication, you really have my attention. And then third is that reduction of the final construction cost. So this is them telling you essentially what it is that's going to really resonate with them if you want to come in and have a conversation about modeling. And the use of BIM for FM, which all of us know is a fantastic idea in theory, and all of us know is being used very little. There aren't that many owners who would really know what to do with a model. And so again, what we really want to do is just baseline where we are as an industry right now among this group of pretty knowledgeable BIM users on complex projects and see if we can't use this to track going forward. So we asked owners, how often are you receiving models, and how often are you actually receiving output in the form of data that comes from those models that you can use in other tools, right? You're getting a fair amount of, you know, the blue is the always and the red is the frequently. So you're getting a fair amount among this particular group, which is a pretty high-end group, frankly. You know, they're doing complex projects, they're doing a fair amount of BIM, they're pretty knowledgeable about it. A lot of them are getting models. I don't know, and we'll see here in the rest of this data that they're yet mature in terms of really using them, much less in the way of I'm actually getting data extracts pulled out intelligently for me by my service providers that I can use in my other tools. I think the interpretation here is it's somewhat left to the owner to do that themselves. And again, this is a really amazing service opportunity. You know, it's pointing out the fact that there's a lack in the marketplace. So we took the folks who said that they were in those top 3 categories. And then at the top there, you see the owner engagement with models, and below you'll see the use of the data. And, you know, do you require models? Do you have specific standards for models? Are you actively using the models? And then below is, do you have specific standards for data delivery, and are you actively using data? You know, I would have to say this is still somewhat emerging. You know, you see the guys at the top there, yes, they are requiring models. They don't necessarily know what they're going to do with them yet. And then overall, you know, the big sort of $64,000 question here, is the owner organization receiving tangible value from the models or the data that are derived from that for use in FM? All right, you only get 29% of these, and these are really the best owners out there in terms of this stuff. Only 29% are saying they're really there yet. About half of them, again, will say, yes, I'm doing it, but, you know, I can't say I strongly agree. So I look at this as a really big business opportunity. There are so many owners that I think would respond to being able to work with this data, but I think there's a big opportunity for the AEC community to bring that to them in a rational fashion and really help them get better use out of it and cement your relationships and deepen your relationships with them. So for those of you who haven't seen the study, there's 4 really great case studies in here showing what people have done in terms of dealing with modeling and the benefits of modeling on complex projects, even down to just a complex mechanical room, all the way up to some of these huge facilities like the UCSF Medical Center. And then there's a series of special features throughout there that we call them deep dives, where we'll see something interesting coming out of the data, and then we want to go and get some experts to do a page or 2 about that. We have one about safety, because again, that's really important. We got folks in Balfour Beatty, Skanska, and Turner talking about how they're actually trying to engage modeling in their safety programs. We've got those 8 owners that we talked about. We've got their several places through the report where they're talking about the impacts, they're talking about the obstacles, they're talking about the use of FM. We've got BIM plus Lean going together. How are they being integrated? We've got some really good thinking on that. We've got a special piece on how this prefabrication is impacting on, especially on healthcare projects. And then towards the end of the report, there's some future technologies that we're seeing which are specifically built off of the fact that you've got digital model data to work with. Now you can start to use some of these really cool technologies, which we believe are going to increase in terms of their impact, and they're also going to come back and have significant contributions to a lot of these 23 metrics that we've been working on. So that's a sort of a drive-by here of the report, what we think is meaningful about it. I think we still have 10 minutes or so that we could do Q&A, but I encourage you to download this at that site, download it from Microsoft through their link. Also, this entire presentation I've just given you is available as a PDF from Microsoft, and you can use parts and pieces of it as you wish, again, to go out and spread the gospel, try and get more owners engaged, try and convince them that indeed this is our future together to improve all the outputs all the way through from your better ability to understand the design, the ability to produce much better documentation that's more highly constructible, that actually produces better projects and with much less of the kinds of problems that we're all used to having all the way through, and then impact with a greener project site and a safer project site at the end of the day.